Hello, and welcome back to part two of Peak Performance. This podcast breaks down the science behind athletic success. Today, we're going to look into the core of AFL performance, ATP, the body's main energy system, and the three energy systems that enables the power behind every kick, leap, sprint, and tackle on the field. If you're wanting to know the importance of ATP, I've got you. Adenosine triphosphate, which is better known as ATP, is the main energy system and source for muscle contraction. Without ATP, movement simply cannot happen, prohibiting marks, goals, and the game. The analogy of petrol in a car is used to describe ATP. When muscles contract to interact with a movement such as contesting for a mark, ATP enables those actions to happen. There is, however, a downfall. Only 2 seconds worth of ATP is stored, so it constantly has to resynthesize during play. Now, some may ask, if ATP doesn't last long, how does it come back? But ATP can be produced in three main ways. Firstly is the ATPPC system. It uses stored creatine phosphate to rapidly rebuild ATP. Creatine phosphate is a high-energy compound in muscle cells that rapidly provides a phosphate group to ADP to regenerate ATP during short bursts of activities. This is your go-to for explosive 20 to 30 meter sprints or a quick burst from a stoppage. Additionally, with the lactic acid system, it breaks down glycogen without oxygen, producing ATP fast but also producing lactic acid as a byproduct. These are used to fuel the repeated high-intensity efforts like chasing an opponent or applying pressure in defense. And finally, the aerobic system. It uses oxygen to produce large amounts of ATP from carbohydrates and fats. This is essential for sustained efforts across 4 quarters, also supporting endurance running between contests. Once ATP is made, the body breaks the bond between the phosphate groups to release energy. That energy powers actin and myosin in the muscle fibers to slide and contract, literally creating the movement in your muscles. All that knowledge is good and all, but now we need to know how the energy systems work together in AFL. Truth be told, these systems don't work alone. They use teamwork, which makes the dream work. As the opening bounce happens, all the players make the first sprint using the ATPPC system. With the ATP being exhausted, creatine phosphate is instantly split to rapidly generate the ATP. After that first sprint, your team gets possession of the ball and is progressing it up the field. This is where your lactic acid system takes over. With the 30 to 90 seconds of getting back into position to get a goal, your lactic acid system provides fast ATP but causes fatigue. Now, as you're jogging back into position, recovering between sprints as well as steadily running, the aerobic system kicks into gear, replenishing ATP and clearing the lactate. In the game of AFL, the energy demand is constant and varied. A player might use the ATPPC system for a burst to the ball, then rely on the aerobic system to recover before their next effort. At this point in the podcast, we know that an average everyday Joe cannot perform these systems efficiently at an athletic level without having to train. So these are some training methods for you. For the anaerobic training, we have short and high intensity training, which is optimal, such as maximal sprints, repeated high intensity efforts, and resistance training to improve ATPPC system and lactic acid systems. Additionally, for aerobic training, long training with rest periods is peak, such as continuous running, interval sessions, and small-sided games to enhance VO2 max and recovery abilities. And as we all should know, the aerobic base allows players to keep high intensity across 4 quarters, while anaerobic conditioning helps with the bursts that win the contests. You cannot have any energy without nutrition. Nutrition is the most important part of anything to do with energy. Without a doubt, carbohydrates are critical. It is stored as glycogen, the primary fuel for both the lactic acid system and the aerobic system during high intensity periods or trainings. An AFL player should aim for around 6 to 10 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body mass during heavy training. Alongside carbohydrates are proteins. They help with muscle resynthesis, typically after collisions and resistance training. An AFL player roughly needs to consume around 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram per day. Fats. Now, fats can be a very scary topic for most people because it resonates with becoming overweight. But this is not the case. Fats are primarily used as the main fuel source in the aerobic system because they are abundant and long-lasting. And finally, hydration. Hydration is equally as essential for aerobic efficiency and especially in long matches. Now, I know I have been using in-game examples throughout the podcast, but they have probably flown right over your heads. So I have made a section to make sure you listeners get it right. The ATPPC system would be used for sprinting to a loose ball in the forward 50, lasting under 10 seconds. And then the lactic acid system would activate while applying defensive pressure for over a minute during a turnover phase. And finally, the aerobic system. It would be in effect when midfield rotations are happening, involving constant running, recovery, and repositioning between contests. So until the next time you watch an AFL match, remember that every movement, from a soaring mark to a 2 kilometer third quarter grind, is powered by ATP. Training and nutrition are the tools that keep those energy systems maintained quarter after quarter. So that's it for now, folks. Have a good one.